Hey, what's up guys? John Jewett here, 212 IFBB Pro, and
Renee Jewett, IFBB Wellness.
And today we have our training sessions post-Olympia, and at this level of training, you might call it elite level of training, we definitely get to phases of training where you have to specialize in your training program, so that's what we wanted to focus on today. Training at Apollon Gym here in New Jersey, and going through our own specialization program focused on what we've addressed for the stage and our needs. So coming off the Olympia stage, looking at our stage photos, what are the weaknesses, what are strengths? And at this level, usually most of your muscle groups are fairly developed, and there might just be certain areas that you really need to focus on. So that's how we set up our training plans.
So being in wellness, my division, you need a lot of lower body. So kind of my feedback from the judges was mainly grow glutes. So glute emphasis will be the focus of my training going into the off season. So today, typically I would start with a glute bridge, but since we were training at Apollon, they didn't have one available, but they did have the butt blaster, which I actually really liked. Ended up doing 3 sets there, and since I'm just coming off of the Olympia stage, I didn't want to bury myself by trying to do 3 sets to failure. So I did keep it to 1 to 2 RIR, so I didn't go to complete failure on those.
Reps in reserve.
Reps in reserve.
Or reps from failure, however you want to say it.
Yes.
So it's we're coming from a state where you have a lot of fatigue already built up from prep, low body fat, low food, high output. So to go right to the gym and train all out, you end up driving a lot more fatigue and not really, it's really more of a recovery week for us.
Almost like a deload, right?
Yeah, it's almost somewhat of a deload or an introduction week to your next training cycle of what we've laid out. Pretty much always start with like a weak body part, what you're trying to bring up the most. So for me, my feedback has been more of development in my delts, triceps, and chest. So right now I have 2 push days a week. One being more shoulder and tricep focused, the other one being more chest focused. So today I did more of my delt tricep focus. So for where I want to start for mine, while Renee starts with a glute movement first, I start with a side delt movement first. And it's also with consideration that what movements that might impact next in the order. So if I was going to be doing like a chest fly, well, that might take away from my pressing. But for a lateral raise, it doesn't really take anything away from the next pressing compound movements I'm going to do. So I start with the machine lateral raise, and I do 4 working sets there. And for that one, I do push them a little closer to a failure point or completing the last rep on my own under good form. Never have like a form failure to where like I keep lifting beyond with just crappy form. That's not what you want either. So that's what was my starting point. Then Renee, you went on to
I went on to a compound, my Barbell Rdls, which I haven't had these in my programming since I've been in prep. I haven't actually done them for a while. Usually if I did do them, it would be out of the Smith machine or the hack squat, doing more of a good morning. But today I did it with a barbell, and they felt really good. Did 3 sets there, and again, nothing to failure.
So like with her training, and I do her programming, so with her training legs, like 3 days a week, you can't do the same thing every day. So today was programmed to me a little bit more of like the hamstring focus with some of those compound lifts. So this would be like her hip hinge day where she had a good morning or an RDL in place, a deadlift variation. Another day where she'd have more of a squat pattern. Then another day that might just be only isolation work. So kind of a quote unquote easier day. Yeah. Nothing's easy, but easy as far as like big lifts aren't done, right? But we like to get back to those movements because in a prep, when you are having a lot of fatigue, your core's getting smaller, you can't brace and stabilize as well. We move to machines like your good morning, something that you can control the movement a little bit easier. But now out of prep, we can focus on doing more of those compound movements, free motion movements that have a high stability requirements, but also you can have a lot of loadability. So you have a lot of runway to add more load, more reps in a progressive plan off season with that. So you did the RDL. My movement, so my next order of priority was doing a type of shoulder press variation. I call it my shoulder press. This is based on my needs and also my ability. So I do a hammer strength incline press. So I haven't moved to free weights yet. I've been doing a lot of machine work. I can't press overhead, so my external rotation is limited. And so when I start pressing directly overhead, I end up just tearing my rotator cuffs apart. So I find the angle that's comfortable for me, that I can get a steep incline and still put focus on my front delt, which this hammer strength machine, you'll see that I put the seat fairly low, but it's at an angle to where it is a lot of front delt, but it also is shoulder safe for what I need. So I do 2 working sets there. I count it as some chest volume too, so some upper chest work, and I count it for some tricep work too. So that was my first compound movement, which you didn't have another compound movement.
No, that was my last compound. I moved to abduction after that.
Abduction. Cool. So for my last compound movement, so I'll get into that. I have a shoulder press movement, incline chest press movement. Then this is my shoulder tricep day, so I'm going to do a close grip bench press. And I do this out of Smith machine because it's also braced and stabilized. Again, what I'm looking for and what you'll see when I'm training is that my wrist is inward from where my elbow is. So I do end up having a lot of bias towards the tricep. You don't want the elbow directly underneath the wrist because that would also really be making it more of a shoulder pressing movement. So with this one, I'm also doing 2 sets. 10 to 12 reps is kind of where I'm going at, and I will adjust the weight if needed, but for this one, I just stayed with the same weight. The reps dropped down just from fatigue. So those were my main 2 compound movements of the day. A shoulder press variation, tricep press variation. Then to get some extra volume in, we get into our isolation work.
Isolation, so I went into an abduction. And this particular machine that they had at Apollon, I had to kind of make it work for me. You'll see that I had to kind of scoot myself all the way forward on the bench to get a good contraction in my glute med. Otherwise, if I was leaning all the way back, it just felt a little awkward for me. But once I scooted forward, it was much better. Did 3 sets there, and I ended up hitting about 15 to 20 reps on each set.
Then for my isolation work, so I do a little bit of extra chest work. So the pressing movements, they're not real biased towards chest, but I will add in some chest volume just through a Pec Deck Fly. And I'll do 2 sets on a Pec Deck Fly. High rep range, 12 to 15, so it's kind of connective tissue in mind. I do some chest isolation work on my shoulder tricep focused day. Again, it's with consideration that my other push day, I do have like chest focused press work, and the isolation work today doesn't really affect connective tissue that much because I'll do it in a higher rep range. It's a lot of loading in the shortened phase of the contraction, so I'll just do 2 sets for chest. So I count this as 6 sets of chest work with my shoulder press, my close grip press, and my fly. Not a lot of volume for chest there. It's not a lot direct, but again, I have another day that's focused on. And at the same time, it's at a convenience, since I'm doing a chest fly, I'll jump and superset it with a rear Pec Deck Fly. So again, this is my shoulder focus day, so I'll do 4 sets and get in some isolation work for rear delts. And then for my last isolation, I move into some tricep work. So I'll add 3 sets of a tricep push down. I like using the prime bar because I can really adjust it to where I need to position myself mechanically. So a lot of push downs start bothering guys' elbows, and you're finding yourself confined to the attachment that you're using. And then your wrist starts getting bothered, you're trying to keep your elbows in, and just forcing your body part to move in a way that it doesn't want to. Well, it's like, hey, why don't we pick a apparatus where you can move kind of freely through it. So that's where like a prime bar that's very adjustable comes in handy. So I did 3 sets there, and that would add up to 7 sets total for my tricep work for the session. You got into some ham isolation work, right?
No, actually,
legs.
I actually threw in.
Yeah.
I ended up doing some leg extension. I was kind of going off of how my legs felt today. If they felt too fatigued, I would have left these out, but I was feeling pretty good. So I ended up doing 3 sets of leg extension.
Yeah, then were you supersetting with leg curl?
Yes.
Standing leg curl, that's right.
So I supersetted my leg extensions with the standing leg curl. 3 sets there as well, and that kind of ended my isolation work. So I ended up with 8 total sets for glutes, 5 total sets for hamstrings, and then 3 total sets for quads.
Yeah, so you can see off if we're using like that volume as an indicator for emphasis, definitely a glute emphasis, and we can see that. And even within my session, it was heavily biased towards delt. Like 6 sets of front delt, 7 sets of triceps, 4 sets of side delt. And these are our working sets. We don't count warm-up sets. So we build up and wait for several of these sets. But the ones that are actually close to that, 1 rep before failure or close or at failure, those are the true sets that we're counting towards our volume. So these are things that we track, volume metrics over the week and how we progress that over time. Then also, of course, we're logging our lifts. That's why we have our phones by us, because we log our load and the reps that we use and make sure that over time those are progressing as well, which we don't have great direct measurements for muscle growth in the off season. We could take caliper sites and arm circumference measurements, or we could do like a DEXA scan. But again, muscle growth is so slow that over the short term, even month to month, these aren't the best indicators. So what we really have to go off of is that we are moving the mark on our logbook, and that over time we're seeing load reps increase within similar rep ranges. And so that's why I think it is very important to track, and we have these set lifts that we're tracking throughout the off season. So Renee could always look back at her Barbell RDL and see, hey, am I progressing over the course of the year? Or I could look back on my hammer strength incline press, because that's a movement that I have at my normal gym. So it's kind of nice when we are traveling. It's tempting to find new machines and try stuff, but if you have some real standardized lifts, you're like, oh, I have this at home. Well, I can see if I'm still making my improvements and keep it in that same order, which is nice. But for a post-show start to the off season, it was excellent session.
Very excellent.
Great connection. I feel really fresh. There's no little niggles or injuries or stuff that I'm having to nurse after a prep, which is nice coming from a state of like really high training volume.
Yeah, definitely. I feel this week, I feel like it's an off season.
Already feeling off season.
It's feeling good.
But anyway, if you have any questions on our workouts, you can see them posted below. Feel free to ask any questions to us. Happy to answer those for you, and we will talk to you next time.
So my awesome coach is this guy right here.
Only awesome if he adds food.
Well, I did get some added foods today, so I'm pretty happy.